What's up, guys? Iron Books here. Hold up, quick flex real quick. With the third part of my Lions of Al-Rassan review. As I said last time, the book is getting more and more better with each chapter, which is a good thing, right? I was really not looking forward to reading the rest of this book after my first 20% that I read through. The initial few chapters that held so much graphic brutality, it really turned me off for the next couple chapters. But so far, I have not seen excessive brutality, and so because of that, I am able to enjoy these sections of the book much more. This section from 40% to 60% has been incredibly enjoyable. Probably the most enjoyable part so far in the story. Not a lot happened in terms of plot-wise. We had one major battle, and that was pretty much it. But it was pretty nice. Also got King Ramiro as well. Got his perspective back into the mix. So always nice. And we were introduced to a couple new characters, I believe. If this is the right part. So we'll see. Anyways, let us start this review off with what I just said, the new perspective. We started off with finally getting the perspective on the Muwardi side, the Muslim side basically, where we are now in the perspective of Yazir, Ibn Yazir, who, along with his brother, is the leader of a specific Muwardi tribe down in the south. Now, why are we given this perspective? Mostly due to the politics of the Kardin. Because, I don't think I actually mentioned this, but Al-Malik II has a brother, a younger brother called Hazem. I believe so. Hazem, right? Yes, Hazem. Hold on. Yes, Hazem. Sorry guys, that took a little bit wider. He is now, Hazem, the younger brother of Al-Malik II, has now been in contact with Yazir and his Muwardi tribe. What is the specific reason for this? Well, basically to conquer Kardin from his father, because as of this moment, during this specific moment, Hazem does not know that Al-Malik I has died from his older brother. But Yazir and Ghalib, who is the brother of Yazir, already know this. The Muwardis are an extremely interesting part of the story, because throughout this entire section of Yazir talking to Hazem, we are constantly reminded of the very strict manners, of the very strict religious aura that Yazir and Gabir are showcasing throughout. They don't take shit slightly, which is a bit of a problem for Yazir because he is now the leader. So he has to kind of take some crap every now and then in order to get things rolling. But in his mind, very much so, he is a very dangerous character, a very dangerous religious figure. Anyways, so that is what this entire section is. And we get this little section of Yazir and Ghalib basically seeing Hazem as someone less than. Mostly due to Hazem not being, well, basically being privileged and not being used to the desert life that the Muwardis, specifically Yazir and Ghalib, have lived. Which is the first offense, so to speak, that Yazir has. He sees him as lesser. He sees him as even less than a man, less than a woman even. Which I'll say this little paragraph here. Yazir had long ago realized, and had tried to make his brother understand, that the softness of life in Al-Rassan had not only turned the men there into infidels, it had also made them very nearly women. Less than women, in fact. Not one of Yazir's wives would have been half so pathetic as this Prince Hazem of Kartada, his nose dripping like a child's in the face of a little wind. That also very well written paragraph there, so I'll give Gabriel some props. His prose is slowly getting better and better throughout this book. At first, not so much so, but now that I'm around 60% of the way through, the prose is getting better and better. And this one paragraph sets the tone for the entire conversation. Because Yazir and Ghalib think of Hazem as lesser. Throughout this entire conversation, we're getting multiple thoughts from Yazir specifically of noticing when Hazem does things wrong in terms of manners. Noticing Hazem just not acting like a true man, right? At least in terms of the Muwardis. It's very interesting, to say the least. And this is where we get a little bit of a difference between Yazir and Ghalib, his brother. Why is this? Well, the main difference being is that Yazir is now the leader of the tribe. And because he is the leader of the tribe, he has to, well, let me just say this. Sometimes, though, a man striving to shape a divided tribal people into a nation, a force in the world, something more than drifts of sand, had to try to hold back his desires, or rise above them. Yazir, on his blanket in the north wind, with winter coming, felt a deep uncertainty gnawing at his vitals. No one had ever warned him that this kind of leadership was bad for the stomach. It's a clear difference between Yazir and Ghalib, where Ghalib is very much in tune with his instincts. He does shit when he feels like doing shit, while Yazir, being a leader of the tribe, knows that he has to quell his primal instincts, so to speak. He has to make sure not to do things as rashly as he would normally do. Because if he did, then, well, he'd basically never have any allies, right? He would never ever gain advantages in terms of politicking. And so because of this, he realizes that he has to hold back when he has a desire to, specifically in this situation, kill Hazem. Very interesting how we're getting a perspective of this very physically dangerous man being very conscious of the fact that he has to hold back his murder-like desire so that he can keep his people afloat. Interesting stuff. And then we get a bit of culture differences, also a bit of more of what I was saying, of Yazir seeing the bad manner of things that Hazem is constantly doing. And we see this in this one specific paragraph. And I'll read out probably only a couple bit of sentences. Hazem wiped at his dripping nose. He used his right hand, which was offensive. He cleared his throat. This is constantly mentioned throughout this little section, that Hazem is always using his right hand to do certain things. Sorry guys, got a bit interrupted there. Now where was I? I think I was talking about the culture differences. So Hazem constantly throughout this entire little section, talking to Yazir, is constantly using his right hand to do certain things. And I don't know why specifically Yazir and Ghalib find this offensive. I don't know why the Muwardis specifically find this offensive, but they do. Constantly, we are told from Yazir's perspective that he notices that Hazem is using his right hand to do things. And that's the interesting thing about religion, right? You have these set boundaries and set guidelines, and so whenever you see something that breaks through that guideline, you're immediately, oh shit, this guy is doing something a little off here. Something that I thought was interesting as this entire little section went by. And then we get this last little section where, after striking up a deal with Yazir, and Hazem specifically wanting Yazir to go off and take down Qartada, take down Al-Malik II, so that basically Hazem could be the leader of Qartada instead, Yazir interrupts them by saying that it is time to pray. It's time for prayer. Let's go. Hazem keeps protesting that, no, I need to leave now, no, it's good that you're helping me, please, I need to go right now. And he touches Yazir with his right hand. Big mistake, right? We're constantly mentioned of this right hand throughout this entire section. And finally, this happens. I'll say it here. But I cannot stay, he said. Excellence, I must go back. Before the winter storms, I must be... He said no more. He was looking downwards. A blank incredulity in his face. It was nearly amusing. Ghalib had cut off the offending hand at the wrist. he was already sheathing his sword. Hazem ibn al-Malik, Prince of Kartada, looked at the bleeding stump where his right hand had been, made a strangled sound in his throat, and fainted. Crazy stuff. Because of touching someone with the right hand specifically, Ghalib cut his hand off. A very violent people with very strict rules. Even to the point, this is even more, not even more graphic, but more graphic in terms of the headspace of Yazir. I'll keep going. He turned to walk on. Ghalib looked as if he would protest. In his mind's eye, Yazir could almost see him severing the man's tongue. The prospect of silence was appealing. He imagined Ghalib kneeling, knife drawn, the Cardidan's head lifted to rest on his left knee, the tongue pulled out as far as it could go, the blade. Ghalib had done this many times. He was good at it. Yazir nearly changed his mind. Nearly, but not quite. Sets the immediate tone for Yazir and Ghalib. We know immediately, straight on, what these type of characters are, what their ambitions are, what they care about, how they act when someone offends them. We know specifically what they are capable of, which was very well done by Guy Gabriel Cave. This section right here was incredibly enjoyable to read, I will say. And then we eventually get back to King Ramiro, next chapter, which is always nice. I think King Ramiro's perspective and now Yazir and Ghalib's perspective is probably my favorite point of views in the story. I don't really care as much about Jahane or even Rodrigo, or especially not, oh my god, I forgot his name, Emir Chiron, Hassad. Yes, Hassad. Don't really care about their perspectives. I do care about Alvar's, but he's not really being shown as much of an important character as I thought he was going to be, so that kind of sucks. Hopefully we actually get back to his perspective soon enough. Anyways, we're back to King Ramiro's perspective. Now, why is this? Mostly due to the religious figures of the Jedi, specifically the High Cleric known as Chevale. Garud. His name's Garud. My Spanish is no longer good, so I can't really pronounce his name as well as I would have back in my youth. Anyways, Garud de Chevales, the High Cleric Garud is now visiting King Ramiro. Now, why are we visiting King Ramiro here? The one simple reason. The High Clerics of the Jedi Kingdoms are assembling kind of an armada of armies. A big mass of armies. Multiple kingdoms, specifically 3 currently, are now being brought together. For what reason? Mostly to take down some Kindath cities. Now, why is this? It's typical religious reasons. That's the reason why for most of the shit that goes on in this book. They see the Kindath as, well, disgusting little heathens. And so because of that, they want to tear away that city down to the ground. What city, mind you? I believe it's called Soria or Serenica. I believe it's Soria. Don't quote me on that. Starts with an S. But they want to tear that city down before going even further south into Muardi territory. All of this is basically a crusade of sorts for the Jedi's, which King Ramiro doesn't particularly like. Why is this? Well, mostly because he is a... Hold on, guys. Mostly because he is a secular character. A secular mind when it comes to the Jedi religion. And so because of this, whenever stuff gets a little fanatical, especially in terms of military progress, King Ramiro specifically is not as inclined to follow the High Cleric's commands. And another crazy thing that for some reason everybody in this story wants now is the High Cleric wanting King Ramiro to go to Kartada, to go and basically eradicate Kartada so that the Jedi's can come through and live there. Why is this? Again, religious reasons. But it's so crazy now that we're getting King Badir, Hassad ibn Chiron, Yazir and Ghalib. And now on top of that, King Ramiro is being told to take care of Cartada. All of these forces are going ever so slowly, being nudged ever so slowly to go after Cartada in the spring. Right now it's winter, so everybody's waiting out. So what I think is going to happen is that we're going to get kind of a three-front war, specifically going after Cartada. What I think is going to happen is King Ramiro coming from the north, Yazir and Ghalib coming from the south, and then Rodrigo and Hassad coming from the east. I think it's going to be crazy if they do this, having 3 entire armies going after one freaking city, and I assume there's going to be some crazy action. So far, Guy Gavriel Cave is pretty decent when it comes to action. Not amazing, but definitely not bad. And so I'm hoping for some really satisfying action if it gets to that part. That's what I'm hoping is going to happen, is that we're going to get this big 3-army clash at Cartada. But who knows? And then we get this pretty crazy twist, kind of a twist, with Queen Ainz. Now, as I talked about in the last part of the video, the last part of my series of reviewing the Lions of Al-Rassan, Queen Ainz is a very religious figure. So much so that she is seen to not really care for the king. And so I thought this was going to be a bit of a pain in the ass for King Ramiro, because not only does he have to kind of stave off the cleric's requests, he'll have to stave off Queen Ainz's request as well. And so, what I'm expecting is Queen Ainz to go along with the cleric's plan. And with King Ramiro saying, hey, I don't want to take care of that city, the Kindath are a very smart and interesting people that I'll probably need help from later on. And the High Cleric saying, what the hell are you thinking of? Blah, blah. Queen Ainz, you didn't tell me of this shit. And then she says this. I'll read out the entire section here. Fight them back! Guru de Charval's voice had lost its modulated control. At the very time when all the kings and princes of the Jadeite world are joining together to cleanse the world of heresy, he turned to Ainz. You told us nothing of this, my lady. The words were an accusation, stiff and grim. Ramiro lost his temper. This was too much. But before he could speak, his queen, his holy devout queen from Ferriere, said, why, cleric, would I tell you such a thing? Her tone was astringent, royal, shockingly cold. Guru de Charvales, utterly unprepared for this, took an involuntary step backwards. Ainz went on. Why would the plans of my dear lord and husband for our own land be a part of any communication between you and me with regard to your pilgrimage? I think you presume, cleric. I await your apology. I'll give Guy Gavriel K this. He has some incredible dialogue writing. I have been supremely impressed by specifically these characters, King Ramiro's perspective and all the characters around him, and Yazir's perspective and all the characters around him. Supremely impressed by everything that has happened. And this entire line/section from Queen Ainz, the unexpected helper of King Ramiro in this situation, was badass, to say the least. I was very impressed. Enough said. And then we get to a new section of the book, which is where the battle scene that I was talking about takes place. We get another perspective in the story. Thankfully, it doesn't last very long. But this perspective is a Jadeite general from Gelona who is having their army go and receive payments from King Badir. Now, why is the reason why we are looking at this perspective? And by the way, very Game of Thronesy, there's so many characters to keep track of that it's kind of hard to remember who's who, especially with the very similar names. Thankfully, it's not gone too hard yet. But we are now in the perspective of Nino de Carrera, who is, like I said, a Jadeite commander, who is receiving payments from King Badir to Gelona. All the while, he is in a canyon, with all of the gold that he received from the payment, and all of the soldiers that are in his company. He eventually into a crevice/ravine, where he, by the way, ignore my cat, she's being crazy right now, where, I can see her hand coming in, my god, where he's basically stopped. And why has he stopped? Because he has slowly been realizing, through scouts and such, that he is being cornered off on both sides in the ravine. And all the while this is happening, someone off in the distance, who we later know as is Jehane, is impersonating the Queen of Gelona, who Nino de Carrera has been sleeping with. Jehane is basically saying sexual nasty shit the entire time to catch Nino de Carrera off guard, which it obviously does. He was going to retreat back, but eventually went forward into the trap to see what his army could do. All the while, we find out that Rodrigo Belmont and Hassad ibn was the entire reason this situation even happened. Rodrigo has been tailing this bandit group that has been trying to ambush Nino de Carrera the entire time, and set up this situation where he annoyed with Jehane to annoy Nino de Carrera so that he could goad the Jedi commander to fight the bandits. And as they're fighting amongst themselves, Rodrigo comes in, sweeps in, to basically take the spoils. What I expected to happen, but they did have me for a little bit there. So, pretty decent plot writing by Guy Gavriel Kang. And like I said before, this entire section you have to read in order to realize how cool this little section was. I was very impressed by the action writing that Guy Gavriel Kang. Very good action, very nice dialogue. All in all, it is getting better and better. So, first quarter, a little crap, but it's getting better and better throughout, right? And now I'm a little over halfway through. So, things are only looking up from here. And then we get our first misspell in the entire book, because we go back to the perspective of Diego and Fernan, the children of Rodrigo Belmont. And in this one section here, this specific sentence, it reads this: Fenian had the capacity to seem older than his years when military matters were being discussed. It's not Fenian. His name is Fernan. Which really caught me off guard, because I thought it was like, oh, is this a different group of Jedites? But then I realized, oh no, it was just a misspell. So, bad on the editor's part. Little shots, I'm gonna give little shots here and there. That should not have been that hard to catch. But hey, it is what it is. Just thought it was funny that it was a misspell. Anyways, we just went through that little section of going back to Fernan and Diego to basically just keep up with what they're doing. All they really did was just show that Diego still has the prophetic-like abilities. Let me make sure it's recording. The prophetic-like of seeing what is happening in other places of the world. Cool, but I'm really important as of right now. Anyways, we go back to Jehane's perspective, where she has gone back to King Badir's the Kingdom of Ragosa, so that she could go back to normal way of life. And why is this? Because of the news that Rodrigo gave her. And what was this news? Basically that Serenica, or Saria, I forget which one, the Kindath city that was given by the Jedi, have well been ransacked and destroyed beyond belief by the very same people that gave them that city. And so she wanted to head back home to Ragosa in order to collect her thoughts. Very, very interesting way of showing Jehane's apprehension and grief, mostly by portraying it as anger. Velaz was downright crying and distraught from this, but hey, very interesting to say the least. So now we're back into the normal way of things for Jehane and Velaz. But in the middle of walking through the city, they are basically captured by a couple assassins that Al-Malik II has put in. Because, remember this, Zabira is still at Ragosa with her children. The assassins came to kill her children, the half-brothers of Al-Malik II. Why is this? So that there is no succession claim from Zabira's children. They captured Velaz and Jehane. Tying up Velaz, stick him in a little fountain so that they can take Jehane to visit Zabira's children under the guise of being doctors that came to learn from Jahane. Eventually get there, and they get through the house, where Jahane is very suspicious of the servants in the house because they hadn't really realized that the other two people that were her captors weren't who they said they were. But all of this goes out the way, mostly due to the servants actually being in on it. Not with the captors, but with Rodrigo Belmont. And why is this? Rodrigo Belmont has been watching her this entire time. How so? With an older character from in the beginning of the book. Ziri, the boy who was the son of the pregnant woman that got raped and killed, came back to Rodrigo Belmont to basically join his little company. And so the first task that he had was to follow Jahane. And him, that Jahane was captured, set up a situation in the house of Zabira's children so that, he's a servant. But in reality, he isn't. And so he brought a knife and stabbed one of the captors. Whole fight ensues, the captors get absolutely demolished, and Jahane survives, which is all well and good. And then we get a nice little tie-in with a previous plot point that was a couple chapter or two ago, because we did go back to Al-Malik II's perspective, mostly being afraid that being kind of his confidence from realizing that his assassins were killed. Now, we didn't know what the assassins were doing in the first place during that chapter, but in this chapter, we know what happened. They were killed by Rodrigo's men. And so, realizing that, and Ammar ibn Khairan. I've been saying that name wrong this entire fucking time. Ignore what I said about Assad. It's Ammar ibn Khairan. Jesus Christ. Anyways, Ammar ibn Khairan predicted that the assassins would come for Zabira's children in the first place, which is very easy to predict, in my opinion. That's probably what was going to happen anyways. And so, I just thought it was a nice tie-in. Interesting stuff's happening. Always love to see King Ramiro and Yazir now. Yazir and Ghalib's perspectives. They're probably my favorite point of view so far in the story, and I hope to see more of them. Anyways, guys, that is it for the third part of my The Lions of Al-Rassan review. Very interesting stuff, and I am very looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. What's going to be the big event, which I assume is going to be a siege of Carthage. Very interesting stuff. I hope it happens, and we'll see how good the action scenes are by Guy Gravioke. See you guys next time. Little flex. Oh wait, no. Little flex. Have a good one, guys.